Hello and welcome. My name is Melissa Galasso, and I'm excited to be with you today to talk about SAS 141. Now, in the times of COVID-19, we knew that SAS 141 was coming, but it went through an unusual process, and it also has a lot of interesting discussion that happened at the meeting that went through this. So let's dive on in as we look at SAS 141. So SAS 141 is the amendments to the effective date of SAS numbers 134 through 140. And yes, those are a lot of SASs. It was issued in May, and what's really interesting is it did not go through the exposure draft process. The AICPA did a little bit of research, and if the only thing they were changing were the effective dates, then it didn't have to go through an exposure process. They can just delay the effective date without having to put it out for public comment. Both FASB and GASB, in delaying the effective date, did put their standards out for public comment. And so that was sort of an interesting element of SAS 141. It gets issued very quickly because it did not have to be issued as public comment and then wait for the comment period and then go through the comments and have a board meeting. They literally just had the board meeting and then were able to issue the final standard. So I think that's really important. In addition, it addresses some of those challenges associated with COVID-19. We have quite a few standards here. We have SAS 134, which is the auditor's report, 135, which is going to align us with some PCOB rules, 136, which is the new employee benefit plan reporting and procedures, 137, which is the auditor's responsibility for other information in an annual report, 138, which is the new definition or updated definition of materiality, 139 and 140 are conforming amendments for the 800 and 900 sections of the audit standards. And so quite a bit has been issued with a lot of change coming. And they were all supposed to be effective at the same time, December of 2020. However, when you have to adopt a suite of standards this large, if you go back to, say, a little bit more back in 2012, but if you think about the clarity standards, right, that was a large amount of change. Now, these were predominantly reporting, but there were other changes in there. There are changes to processes and terminology. There's also changes to required audit procedures. And so as a result, it's going to be quite an undertaking to adopt all of these at the same time. And so when COVID-19 struck, many of the standard setters realized that many entities are focused on other things, PPP loans, CARES Act, making sure that their clients are still in business to have an audit, supporting those businesses, and then for those businesses, trying to make sure that they're able to get their financial reporting out despite things like stay-at-home orders. So lots of happening out there that needed to be addressed, and the AICPA understood these challenges. So as you can see here, as a result of the challenge, one of the things that they decided to do was delay the effective date of all of these standards by 1 year. So they looked at the entire suite. None of them were skipped, and they just delayed the entire suite of standards. They decided that it was really important to give us the time we needed to really devote to implementing these correctly. Most of these are designed to improve audit quality, right? That was really what was the impetus for actually issuing the original standard. And so as a result, they wanted to make sure that they were able to give it the attention that it needs, especially for some of these changes that require procedural changes, updating to work papers, updating to engagement letters and rep letters, right? It's not like it's a one, if it was just changing the audit report, I think it would be a little bit different. But because there are interrelationship changes as well, I think that was really important. Now, extant standards 134, 136, 137, 139, and 140 do not currently permit early adoption. 135, which was alignment with the PCOB, and 138, the definition of materiality, did actually allow for early adoption because 135 really wasn't part of the reporting suite. It was some changes related to alignment with the PCOB standards. The rest of these standards are alignment with the IAASB standards, and so it was sort of the odd man out to begin with. And then 138, we didn't expect a ton of practice changes. They were updating the definition of materiality. They were bringing it back to the U.S. definition of materiality, consistent with actions done by the FASB earlier. And so as a result, both of those allowed for early adoption. If you attended the ASB meeting, the Auditing Standards Board meeting, where they discussed SAS 141, everyone was pretty much in agreement on delaying the standards. Where they spent most of their time was in early adoption. Because 134, 136, 137, 139, and 140 did not permit early adoption. And the rationale was that they wanted the audit report to sort of update together. So if you remember back at the clarity standards when we added headings, we didn't want some reports with headings floating around with some that did not, and some confusion in the marketplace as to what was performed in the audit. And so very similarly, they had chosen not to. Now, standard operating procedure for the AICPA is when there is an option, they typically do permit early adoption. And so when they do not permit early adoption, it's very intentional. And so as a result, the big topic of conversation at the ASB meeting was not on the delay. Everyone was very much in favor of that, but it was on the discussion regarding early adoption. Ultimately, SAS 141 does permit early adoption for the entire suite because the ASB determined it was in the best interest of firms to have flexibility in application. However, I do want to point out that the interplay between these standards is real. So for example, you can't just adopt SAS 134 because SAS 138 changes the definition of materiality, which is in the report, in 134. And you can't adopt SAS 136 without SAS 134 because SAS 136 does not address AUC 701, 705, or 706, which are in SAS 134. And you can't adopt SAS 140 without SAS 134. So if you don't understand the interrelationship of these standards, it would be very hard to adopt a single standard. And so while they did not require adoption together, and they did say you can choose what you want to early adopt, they do include a statement in the SAS that says that the ASB recommends that they be adopted as a suite of standards because of the interplay between them, because otherwise it would be very difficult. In addition, there was discussion about whether you can adopt it for a particular client and not for other clients, whether you could adopt it for a particular industry or for a particular partner and not others. And ultimately, early adoption is early adoption. So the ASB had some discussion about what does this mean and what does this look like. And they decided ultimately that in the standard, they would make a recommendation, they would bring to light, and then they would do some education. So there have been some Journal of Accountancy articles and others that are really explaining how when you're adopting these standards, you have to be thoughtful about that. And how you're going to early adopt. So when we're talking to firms, we have heard that we don't expect a ton of early adoption simply because right now we know that our auditors are really trying very hard to help with everything else going on. And so we want to make sure that they are getting, they have the opportunity and the training that it's going to take to really adopt these standards. And so when we look at the changes, I think that's going to be really the big focus. So SAS 141 will delay the entire suite and permit early adoption for the entire suite to allow that flexibility. It's really up to us to take that next step and to think about how we want to adopt this. I think this is a QC issue. I believe that many firms will need to document their processes. In addition, because you can have multiple versions of a standard now, AUC 700 could be adopting 134 or not adopting 134. You're going to notice that they're going to have the letter B after them. So if you see AUC section 700B, that means that you have not adopted SAS 134. If you see just AUC section 700, that indicates that you have adopted SAS 134. And so to try to differentiate in the market and to make sure that when we're citing our standards, now that you can early adopt, and you can early adopt as early as if you wanted to, those 531, those 630 year ends, right? They are eligible because there wasn't like the original effective date. It's just early adoption. So the making sure that we're documenting which standards we're following is going to be very important. All right, so that's a wrap. Obviously, a very important standard given the movement around COVID-19. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope to see you on a future Nano Learning. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.